Picture this. You're standing in the middle of the supplement aisle at your local pharmacy.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there.
Right. The fluorescent lights are buzzing overhead, reflecting off hundreds of plastic bottles, and they are practically shouting at you. You know, claims like maximum energy or ultimate joint support.
Pure focus.
Exactly. So you pick up a bottle, you flip it over to read the back, and you are just hit with a wall of microscopic text. I mean, you feel like you need a PhD in biochemistry just to decipher what you're actually holding.
It is an incredibly common and, frankly, an engineered experience.
Hey, engineered, you think it's on purpose.
Oh, absolutely. That wall of text on the back of the bottle often feels designed to overwhelm rather than inform the consumer. I mean, the sheer density of information creates this psychological barrier.
Well, breaking down that barrier is exactly our mission for today's deep dive. We are taking you from a confused shopper standing in the aisle to an empowered, savvy consumer who can cut right through the flashy marketing.
Right, getting past the hype.
Yeah. And we're pulling our insights today from a really illuminating December 2025 article by Laurent Fabian. He's the founder of Ingredientsage, and the piece is titled, "What is the Supplements Facts Panel?"
Fabian approaches this with a highly analytical lens, which is great. He reframes this intimidating little rectangle of text, not as a regulatory hurdle, but as the consumer's primary diagnostic tool for separating, physiological reality from marketing fiction.
You know, when I was reading through Fabian's article, a specific analogy popped into my head. Buying a supplement is remarkably similar to using a dating app.
A dating app? Okay, how so?
Well, think about it. The front of the bottle is basically the dating profile picture.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Right. It is perfectly curated, heavily filtered, and designed to make you swipe right. I mean, it tells you whatever it thinks you want to hear. But that black and white supplement facts panel on the back?
The background check.
Exactly. That is the background check. That is where you find out what's actually under the hood.
That analogy holds up surprisingly well, actually. The front is pure marketing narrative, and the back is empirical data. And knowing how to read that data is really the only way to ensure the biological relationship you're about to start with this product is actually going to yield a return on your metabolic investment.
So to use that background check effectively, we have to deconstruct the anatomy of the rectangle itself. We are moving from that overwhelming feeling to breaking it down into 4 digestible, highly logical parts.
Right.
We all know the basic sections, right? You've got serving size, servings per container, the ingredients and their amounts, and the percent daily value. But it's how these sections interact that really matters.
Yeah, they don't exist in a vacuum.
Let's start with the serving size. Because for an audience that already knows what a serving size is, the real issue isn't defining it. It's understanding how manufacturers manipulate it to alter the perception of literally everything else on the label.
That is the crucial distinction. You see, the serving size is the mathematical anchor for the entire panel.
The anchor.
Exactly. If a manufacturer wants to boast a massive amount of an active ingredient on the front label, they simply increase the serving size on the back to, say, 3, 4, or even 6 capsules.
Oh, wow. So they just require you to take more.
Right. So the unwary consumer looks at the milligram count, thinks they are getting a highly concentrated pill, but they're actually just looking at the cumulative total of swallowing a handful of pills.
It reminds me of, that classic cereal box illusion.
Oh, yeah. The serving size trick.
Right. You buy a giant box of heavily sugared cereal because the nutritional panel proudly declares it only has 110 calories.
Which sounds great on paper.
Exactly. But then you look closer at the serving size and you realize a serving is 3/4 of a cup. I mean, nobody pours 3/4 of a cup of cereal.
Not unless you're feeding a toddler.
Right. By the time you fill a normal bowl, you've tripled the caloric intake. So the metric is technically accurate, but practically it's completely deceptive.
And that deceptive scaling brings us to the percent daily value, or the percent DV, which Fabian actually identifies as the consumer's most potent tool.
Why is that the most potent?
Well, human beings are notoriously bad at conceptualizing raw numbers in a biological vacuum. If a label says a pill contains 500 milligrams of a compound, your brain just lacks the innate framework to know if that's a microscopic drop in the bucket or a massive, potentially toxic overload.
It's just a raw data point devoid of context.
Precisely.
But I want to push on how that percent DV is actually calculated, because isn't it based on a somewhat arbitrary baseline?
It is, yeah. It's based on a standardized 2,000-calorie daily diet, which is essentially a population-level statistical average that was originally established decades ago.
So it might not be perfect for everyone.
Right. While it may not perfectly map to the metabolic needs of an elite endurance athlete or, a highly sedentary person, its utility isn't in absolute precision.
Okay, then what is its utility?
Its utility is in translation. The percent DV translates abstract mass-like milligrams and micrograms into biological proportion. It shifts your perspective from asking, how much does this weigh, to asking, how much of my holistic daily requirement does this actually fulfill?
Which naturally brings us to how companies kind of weaponize these metrics against us. Fabian outlines a few distinct traps in his article, starting with what we can call the great deal trap.
Ah, yes.
So you're standing in the aisle, you're comparing 2 bottles of vitamin D. Bottle A is $20, bottle B is heavily discounted, maybe $8, and front of the label advertises a massive 2,000 IU dose.
Let's actually define what that IU means for a second, because it's a prime example of label confusion.
Yeah, please do.
So IU stands for international units. Unlike milligrams, which measure the physical weight or mass of a substance, an IU measures the biological activity or effect of a substance.
Oh, interesting. So it's about what it does, not what it weighs.
Exactly. For vitamin D, 1 IU is defined as the biological equivalent of 0.025 micrograms of cholecalciferol. Manufacturers use IUs for certain vitamins because the chemical forms can vary in weight, but the IU gives you a standardized measure of its actual impact on your body.
Okay, so you see this massive 2,000 IU number on the $8 bottle, and it feels like a total steal.
Right.
But then you run the background check. You flip it over, you look at the serving size, and it says 4 capsules. To get that advertised biological effect, you have to burn through 4 pills every single morning. That heavily discounted bottle is going to be empty in 8 days.
You're paying for the illusion of density.
The illusion of density, I like that.
Yeah. The front of the bottle sold you concentration, but the back of the bottle reveals dilution. And, this manipulation extends beyond simple volume. It also applies to the specific chemical structures of the ingredients themselves. Fabian highlights this with the omega-3 pitfall.
This is where reading the ingredients and amounts section becomes basically non-negotiable. Someone grabs a generic bottle labeled omega-3 fish oil, assuming they're checking the box for their cardiovascular and cognitive health.
But when you scrutinize the panel, you often find a glaring omission. Omega-3 is a really broad category of fatty acids.
Okay.
The 2 specific molecules that actually confer the well-documented neurological and cardiovascular benefits are EPA, which stands for eicosapentaenoic acid, and DHA, docosahexaenoic acid.
And why do those 2 specific structures matter so much more than just generic fish oil?
It really comes down to cellular mechanics. DHA, for example, is a primary structural component of the human brain, cerebral cortex, and retina.
Wow.
Yeah. Its specific molecular shape makes cell membranes more fluid, which physically allows for faster electrical signaling between neurons.
So it's literally greasing the wheels of your brain.
Basically, yes. And EPA, on the other hand, acts as a precursor for signaling molecules that reduce cellular inflammation. So if you buy a supplement that boasts 1,000 milligrams of fish oil on the front, but the panel reveals only 50 milligrams of actual EPA and DHA combined, you're ingesting a useless fat. The therapeutic mechanism is just missing.
That raises a massive red flag for me. I mean, if a company can plaster brain health on the front of an omega-3 bottle that contains virtually no functional DHA, who is policing this, it feels like we are assuming a level of governmental oversight that simply doesn't exist.
That assumption is one of the most dangerous misconceptions in the entire wellness industry.
Really?
Yes. In the United States, the Food and Drug Administration mandates the formatting of the supplement facts panel. They dictate the font size, the order of the ingredients, the lines, but they do not approve the contents of dietary supplements before they hit the shelves.
Wait, I really want to pause and underline that. So you're telling me there's 0 pre-market approval. A company can just formulate a pill, bottle it, and ship it to the pharmacy without a government scientist ever, verifying that the pill actually does what the label claims.
That is exactly right. That is a regulatory landscape created by the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, or DSHEA, which was passed back in 1994.
DSHEA, okay.
Yeah. And what DSA did was it effectively categorized supplements more like food than like pharmaceutical drugs.
Oh, wow.
Right. So for a prescription medication, the burden of proof is on the manufacturer. I mean, they must conduct rigorous clinical trials to prove to the FDA that a drug is safe and effective before it can be sold.
Because it's a drug?
Exactly. But for dietary supplements, the burden of proof is entirely inverted.
What do you mean inverted?
I mean, the FDA must prove a product is unsafe in order to pull it off the market, but only after it's already being sold on shelves.
It's remarkably similar to how the cosmetics industry is regulated. I mean, you can put almost anything into a face cream, launch it to the public, and the regulatory bodies generally only step in if people start showing up to the hospital with chemical burns. It's an entirely reactive system, not a proactive one.
And that regulatory reality completely shifts the function of the supplement facts panel. Because there is no pre-market clinical vetting, the panel is literally the only objective safety net you have.
So reading this panel isn't just about getting a good deal, it's fundamentally about protecting yourself.
Exactly. You cannot outsource your critical thinking to the pharmacy or the government. The burden of verification falls squarely on the consumer.
Well, if the burden is on us, we have to look past the main vitamins and the percent DV all the way down to the fine print at the very bottom. The section usually labeled other ingredient.
The other ingredients section is fascinating because it's where the physical reality of manufacturing meets the chemical reality of the supplement.
What do you mean by physical reality?
Well, active ingredients rarely exist in a stable, easily swallowable form on their own. They require binders to hold the powder together, excipients to help the pill dissolve at the right rate in your digestive tract, and preservatives to ensure a viable shelf life.
Right. They have to actually make it into a pill. Fabian points out that while these are generally harmless, this is the critical zone for anyone with severe allergies.
Yes, absolutely.
If a facility uses soy lecithin as an emulsifier or a specific synthetic dye for the capsule coloring, this tiny text is the only place it will be declared. But there's another, much more deceptive practice that hides in these lower sections, right? The proprietary blend.
Proprietary blends are the ultimate loophole in supplement transparency. A manufacturer is legally required to list the ingredients within a proprietary blend in descending order of weight.
Ooh.
But, and this is the kicker, they are not required to disclose the specific amount of each individual ingredient.
Really?
Yeah. They only have to list the total weight of the entire blend.
So they create something called the maximum focus matrix, which weighs, say, 1,000 milligrams. The first ingredient is cheap caffeine, and the last ingredient is a highly expensive, rare botanical extract.
In the industry, this is known as fairy dusting.
Fairy dusting, wow.
Yeah, they sprinkle in a microscopic subclinical trace of the expensive botanical, just enough to legally put its name on the label to drive marketing. While the other 999 milligrams of the blend consist of cheap, generic fillers. The proprietary blend allows them to hide the fact that the expensive ingredient is entirely underdosed.
Which brings us to how we actually apply all of this data. Fabian shares a personal anecdote in his article about a light bulb moment he had while trying to navigate this exact maze. He was looking for a multivitamin and was completely paralyzed by the sheer volume of perfectly optimized marketing profiles on the bottles.
Rather than falling victim to decision fatigue, he utilized the percent DV and the ingredient amounts to filter out the noise.
He ran the background checks.
Exactly. He actively looked for products that avoided massive, unnecessary overloads of certain vitamins, sometimes literally thousands of times the daily value, which the body simply excretes anyway, and found formulations that efficiently met his baseline needs.
And that light bulb moment evolved into a philosophy he calls targeted supplementing. Instead of treating a supplement as a generic daily habit, he began adjusting his intake based on fluctuating seasonal and physiological demand.
Right, tailoring it to his life.
Yeah. For instance, during the dark winter months, he analyzed the panels to ensure he was hitting specific biological thresholds for vitamin D, compensating for the lack of natural sunlight synthesis.
He also mentions shifting his focus during periods of heavy physical training. He used the panels to deliberately seek out supplements rich in magnesium and potassium.
Let's dig into the mechanism of that. Why magnesium for physical training? What is it actually doing in the body?
Magnesium plays a vital mechanical role in muscle contraction. When your brain tells a muscle to contract, it floods the muscle fibers with calcium. To relax that muscle, the calcium needs to be pushed back out.
Okay, calcium for contracting.
Right. And magnesium acts as a natural calcium channel blocker. It literally competes with calcium, helping the muscle fibers disengage and relax. If you are training heavily and depleting your magnesium stores through sweat, your muscles lack the chemical necessary to fully relax.
Which leads to cramping, stiffness, and prolonged recovery times.
Exactly.
I want to challenge this idea of targeted supplementing, though. Is the human body really that modular? It feels incredibly tempting and honestly much easier to just buy a premium generic multivitamin and treat it as a universal safety net rather than trying to match specific chemical compounds to specific physiological symptoms.
The temptation is totally understandable because, frankly, humans crave simplicity, and a multivitamin offers the illusion of comprehensive coverage. But a biological system operates on precision, not just volume. Think of your cellular receptors and enzymes like a highly complex system of locks.
Okay, a lock and key mechanism.
Exactly. When your body is deficient in magnesium, it means millions of specific cellular locks are sitting empty, waiting for a magnesium molecule of the precise shape and charge to enter and turn the mechanism.
Right.
Taking a massive dose of a generic multivitamin is the equivalent of throwing a giant heavy keychain at a door and hoping one of the keys happens to fit into the lock.
You might hit the lock, but you're also jamming a bunch of unnecessary keys into the door frame, which the body then has to expend energy to filter out and excrete.
Furthermore, many vitamins and minerals actively compete with one another for absorption in the intestinal tract. High doses of calcium, for example, can significantly inhibit the absorption of iron.
So they fight each other.
They do. If you throw the entire keychain at your digestive system at once, the compounds literally block each other from entering the bloodstream. The Supplement Facts panel allows you to identify the specific key you're missing and deliver it without all the competing biochemical noise.
That reframes the entire concept of the panel for me. It's not a chemistry test you're failing. It is an instrument of precision. It takes the guesswork out of the aisle, stripping away the shiny fonts, the hyperbolic claims, and the engineered overwhelm. It lays out the objective molecular reality in stark black and white.
It transforms the consumer from a passive target of advertising into an active, informed architect of their own biology. However, Fabian does make a vital point that this level of biochemical architecture shouldn't always be a solo endeavor.
Right. The background check is useless if you don't know what crimes you're actually looking for. When in doubt, consulting a healthcare professional like a physician or a registered dietitian is paramount.
Absolutely.
They can run blood work to identify what your specific physiological deficits actually are. Once you know you are deficient in vitamin D or iron, you know precisely what numbers to look for when you turn that bottle around. Taking a few moments to understand the architecture of that label can genuinely alter the trajectory of your long-term well-being.
This analysis of Fabian's work does leave us with a broader, perhaps more unsettling question regarding our modern consumer habits, though. We've spent this entire discussion dissecting the supplement industry's reliance on marketing over substance.
But those mechanics aren't isolated to the pharmacy. If products designed specifically to alter our internal biology products we literally swallow, don't require pre-market government approval, and they rely on flashy front-of-bottle narratives to mask the biochemical reality on the back.
Yeah.
How many other consumable products in our daily routines are operating on the exact same premise?
That is a fascinating question.
Right. Are we swiping right on our processed foods, our daily cosmetics, our energy drinks, purely based on a heavily filtered profile picture?
It's definitely something you have to wonder about.
The next time you pick up any product promising to optimize your life, turn it around and do the background check. The data might tell a completely different story.